Good evening. The torrent of events, including the outright bloodshed of innocent Nigerians in the past few weeks, have demonstrated once again the dangerous fact that there's a great vacuum in national leadership. I did not see how a president could continue to keep pandering while our nation drifts towards anarchy. It's equally obvious that we have not drawn any lessons from our past. A past that saw a nation divided and soaked deep in blood. At the moment, our national leaders should be racing to prevent an ugly history from being rewritten. Our president and his stooges choose to distract the nation by engaging in action that's almost treasonable, even suicidal, by withdrawing the much needed oil subsidy. And soon they will buy out Nigerian labor union leaders, and the poor average Nigerian will be left to face the harshest moments of his and her life and bear the crushing burdens of acute inflation, while Jonathan and elected leaders daily enjoy the luxuries of public funds, free food, housing, free transportation, and even free monthly allowances. Or should I say fashion allowances. Instead of summoning the nation's military might to rein in on Boko Haram and prevent such a small group from instigating both sectarian and ethnic wars, our federal government and president, all that the federal government and the president can do is to whine about the federal government that has been infiltrated by Boko Haram agents. Did the president and his law enforcement agents not anticipate such likelihood? The Delta region uprising ought to have been sufficient to warn government of this kind of insubordination and sabotage. Working against your own governments, especially on matters of national security and economic sabotage, ought to have been a serious offense by now, and laws enacted to seriously punish any offenders. The same thing transpired during the heat of the Delta region crisis, and yet we kept moving, not drawing any lessons from our past to prevent repetitions. Yet I do express such frustration with insubordination. We do not know what role President Jonathan played then as Vice President. Maybe it is a payback from other leaders and federal employees. As they say, the chicken would always come home to roost. The answer for us now is to be honest with ourselves and put our nation first, put the public interest above partisanship and individual interests. And here and now, with all due respect, without missing words, President Jonathan has betrayed the trust reposed in him by the masses and has demonstrated his inability to establish public order. Our National Congress, governors, and fellow Nigerians are duty bound to protect the interests of the nation against this president and should do so as quickly as is possible. Either he has no mind of his own and is being misled, or he has lifted his personal and political interest over national interest. First, if our military and police forces are not up to the task of putting down small armed groups, how can they face and defend the nation against foreign enemies who would equally attempt to infiltrate our institutions to gather the logistics to fight our nation? This is a gross failure, dangerous and inexcusable on the part of our government. The obvious truth is that government has no system or process in place to identify enemies of the nation and swiftly preempt them. The president himself is not safe from this violence, and one of the lives he could be saving might be his as well, by stepping out boldly and leaving no stones unturned in confronting Boko Haram. He need not expend much effort in realizing the deadly and divisive consequences of feet dragging on a sensitive matter of this nature. No matter what loyalty and empathy our northern men and women might feel about Boko Haram, the president has a responsibility of articulating to them that it is in their own interest that the group be disarmed and brought to justice. It is his responsibility to secure our borders, to conduct a thorough assessment of the group, unravel where their finances, their expertise are coming from, who, if any, are behind them, and dislodge the whole network. This is why we need a much sophisticated law enforcement body. For decades, no leaders have made the right investment in this area. Moreover, Nigeria cannot do it alone. Boko Haram is a terrorist group, and I do not think our nation has ever imagined terrorism would arrive at our shores. So we must boldly accept this evil and upgrade our law enforcement to meet the new challenges of our time. Our government and president must put our fear and politics aside and assume the courage and boldness of leadership to deal with any violent groups in the nation. As I speak, how much effort is the government making to stop the flow of guns across our borders? How much effort is it making to deal with lawlessness? How much effort is it taking to identify criminals in the planning stage? These are questions that no one, even the president, can answer. Someone had remarked before me that you can have a human head in the trunk of your car and drive across any state in Nigeria as long as you have the money to bribe the roadside police officers. And that is the problem. That is the problem. When people are no longer being punished for their crimes, it should be quite understood that they will continue to commit them. Boko Haram or any group does not start one day. These ideas fester. They are nurtured. And as they get away with one crime, one misguided act, they are slowly emboldened until they mature as criminal entities and now terrorist groups. Where were our intelligence services to keep eyes on this group as they incubated and then unraveled? Demanding that all government agencies are effectively doing their part in ensuring public safety, ensuring that our national security is not compromised, and that justice is constantly served is the job of the president. If the president is not emphasizing reward and punishment in his daily relationship with those around him and with Nigerians, the message will be that no one cares, and that is a dangerous message. It is the public perception of a leader's attitude that determines how he conducts himself. I seriously doubt if any group of people could have carried that on with these kinds of violence and lawlessness we witness today if General Passenger or even Babangida were in power today. I seriously doubt it. I seriously doubt it. President Jonathan has not shown any backbones in dealing with matters of this kind, and groups will continue to take his administration for granted. In fact, his latest action on gas is a reckless political ploy to conceal his inability to deal with Boko Haram. So, in my opinion. So, as his fellow innocent Nigerians are being slaughtered once again, he quickly moved to distract the nation by pulling the plugs on government oil subsidy. Now the nation is preoccupied with higher gas prices and its aftermath, while murder and mayhem against Ibos and Christians become second news, losing the world and media spotlight they deserve, and saving him from the necessary overwhelming scrutiny of his leadership. He was at the center of the Delta uprising as Shiradwa's vice and must have supported appeasement instead of an all-out declaration of war against the young men of the Delta. And in doing so, an unfortunate precedent was set. The federal government had essentially capitulated to a rebel violent group. So now, his hands are tied behind his back. He cannot unleash the full armed might of the nation without being accused of unfairness. Though the nation and every right-thinking Nigerian can see and make a clear distinction between these two regional armed and violent groups. The Delta boss fought the government on the grounds of fairness and chose their targets discriminately. But Boko Haram found innocent Ibos and Christians as targets, forfeiting any rational justification nor sympathy. The federal government is duty-bound to take military action at all costs to stop that violence and perhaps end any kind of armed violence perpetually in Nigeria. President Jonathan should stop whatever pandering and feet-dragging, stop his fear of influence of northern leaders, and step up effort to eliminate this virulent menace. Slow diplomacy, lip service, incoherent policy statements are too dangerous in the face of this kind of unwarranted killing. We have been there before and could go there again, except this time Ibos and Christians are not going to exercise much restraint. The results could be cataclysmic for our nation to remain intact. The very people who are remaining silent or sympathetic today could all be going into exile, abandoning the nation's poor when things explode. I believe a greater number of Northerners do not like the bloodshed and destruction directed at their fellow Nigerians. Since after the Civil War, we've come a long way for forging unity and managing our cultural and religious differences. Progress has been made, But the past 2 decades, that progress has been eroded. Our northern brothers and sisters cannot forever sit on the fences while small bands of thugs instigate cause for national disunity and division. They must really assume the responsibility of distinguishing themselves from these recurring atrocities and thugs, as well as avoid sharing the ugly names and adjectives ascribed to them. And at this point, we ought to be honest with ourselves. Will we all be better off and safer with a splintered nation creating two republics? And if so, why are we slow and being expedient in acknowledging a likely solution? No group of people should ever be made the nation's sacrificial lambs for eternity. President Jonathan's indecisiveness in the face of this egregious crime and attack on the nation is simply dangerous. Boko Haram has declared war on Nigeria and is winning. The moral imperative on the part of the federal government to stand up for peace, to govern as the last authority and power, cannot be overemphasized. The lives of Ibos are worth more than 4 and 5 million naira paid to loved ones in the last massacre. The federal government and state governors ought to convene and seek lasting solutions. All elements must be put on the table and explored. For very long, government has been lukewarm in enforcing the laws, and lawlessness has grown to epidemic levels. Lukewarm in addressing the grinding poverty, which, in my opinion, is at the core of all these violent eruptions. And last week, President Jonathan, instead of presenting the nation a clear vision for progress, took an action that would undoubtedly implode an already fragile economy. I do not know what he and his advisors were thinking about, but I'm convinced that they were not thinking about Nigerians, about the 70% unemployed and unemployed, about the already high cost of living, the high mortality rate due to poverty, the crimes that have robbed Nigerians of their safety and happiness. They are simply oblivious of the reality of life, that some Nigerians today cannot even afford one inexpensive meal. Many forced to live in conditions and environments some nations deem unfit for their livestock. This is not the president that saw himself as a breath of fresh air. The air that's coming from the president is foul, choking his fellow Nigerians. By the time the winds blow them away, many will die, diseases from self-neglect will rage, and history will be written in infamy. No leaders or nations who understand the basic economics will desire high prices of goods and services and subsidizing production, and these goods and services are sometimes necessary to increase demand and achieve affordability, which is good for any economy. Americans and other Western nations are already showing signs of panic that the crisis in Nigeria would affect their fuel prices and consequently their economies. If that is not a profound evidence to President Jonathan and Mrs. Iwala that high oil prices are detrimental to economies, they ought to resign and seek employment in our local markets. Sometimes subsidies serve both social and economic purposes, and a single product economy like Nigeria is at great risk of collapsing when you recklessly shift prices. Oil is a driving and determining force in our economy, though unfortunate, because we have failed to develop other products for decades. With the average median and disposable incomes in Nigeria so low, President John has single-handedly created inflationary trends that will force Nigeria to question its intent and ability to lead. We are now hearing of many Nigerians stuck in places away from their permanent residence because of the overwhelming high cost of transportation and returning home. This is the real state of emergency. The president must quickly resign his decision to remove oil subsidy and give Nigerians the opportunity to live. How much more can he kick his fellow Nigerians while they're already laying on the ground? There was a genuine reason that the subsidy on oil was put in place, to cushion prices and assist Nigeria stabilize its economy. As oil prices rise, the price of other goods and services have followed simultaneously, compounding an already compounded economic situation. High oil prices or other measurement indicators do bring governments down, and good leaders work feverishly to prevent rising prices. They understand the economic impact and in extreme cases have gone to war internationally to prevent high oil prices domestically. This is a known fact. Unfortunately, President Jonathan is showing his disregard for Nigeria's economic growth and progress. The most advanced nations subsidize so much of their goods and services, even with full employment. Does the president not know that New York City mass transit is subsidized by the U.S. federal government? Fellow Nigerians, I'm beginning to wonder if this president is working for Nigeria or for some foreign entity and himself. It is hard to imagine that after almost 2 years of being an acting president and then an elected president, this is what he can offer our nation. I have supported this president because of his academic background and is sorely regretful. Where is his vision for Nigeria? Where is this groundbreaking moment with Nigeria? Law and order are the least in all of the government's agenda of priorities. Placing uniformed police officers here and there is not law enforcement. In fact, there are incidents where these officers have actually robbed people in plain sight. Why expend billions every 4 years to elect lawmakers if nothing ever changes? Many things are happening in our nation, atrocious and evil acts, and government from local to federal further retreat from their constitutional duties as arbiters of first and last resort. How many of these leaders would take us for granted every decade? If there has been meaningful development, good currency value, high employment, safe and healthy environment, reasonable gross domestic product, then one could argue for a slow phase out of the subsidy or reduction. But all these things are absent. Lower price of goods and services are the only benefits the poor Nigerians can indirectly get from their government, since not everyone is in a position to receive bribes and commit fraudulent acts for survival. And instead of President Jonathan working and fighting every day to give the average Nigerian a better life, he has chosen to punish him. The intended savings from the removal would only end in private hands as usual. Fellow Nigerians, I guess we all make good puppets on the strings, and only the good God knows why and when he will liberate us. Good night, and may God help us.